And so I'm gonna play a song, and this song's called The Bigot Song.
We're not settling, you know, like a lot of games based on licenses, they become kind of work for hire projects, just milking a franchise.
A miracle, you guys! A miracle!
This is Randy Pitchford, previously a developer, longtime CEO, a magician, a Twitter addict, and possibly the most unhinged man in the gaming industry.
I'm psyched. I'm psyched.
Behind him are games that combined have sold over 100 million copies, thanks almost entirely to Borderlands, but Randy is also the face behind countless controversies, fan backlash, Twitter meltdowns, messy lawsuits, and some of the strangest and most serious allegations you will ever hear about a gaming CEO, from accusations of embezzlement, assault, to a lost USB stick containing barely legal content.
It was barely legal. Like this girl's handle was only 18, and it's a woman who is and a huge amount of fluid comes out of her. This is not a sex worker. This is a magician.
But before the scandals, before the chaos, it all began with a map. In 1996, George Broussard, president of Apogee Software, better known as 3D Realms, stumbled across a set of user-made Duke Nukem maps floating around the early internet. They weren't from a veteran developer, but from a self-taught hobbyist, calling himself Duval Magic. Impressed, Broussard brought him onto the team. That fan was Randy Pitchford. Suddenly, the part-time magician with no formal training was now a level designer on Duke Nukem 3D Atomic Edition and Shadow Warrior.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
By 1999, Randy and 4 others decided to strike out on their own, creating a little-known studio, Gearbox Software. Rather than launching with their own ideas, Gearbox built its reputation on expansions and ports for some of the biggest names in gaming. Expansions for Half-Life, ports to the PlayStation 2, and even the PC release of Halo Combat Evolved, earning Gearbox respect, but not stardom. That all changed in 2005, when they finally stepped out of the shadows with their first original franchise, Brothers in Arms.
So Brothers in Arms is about that brotherhood between soldiers. And it's about these guys and why they do what they do and how they manage it. But the player is the one reliving the battle.
At the height of the World War II shooter craze, it stood out by blending tactical squad mechanics with first-person action, delivering a gritty cinematic soldier drama. And it paid off. Millions of copies sold, critical acclaim. But despite its success, Brothers in Arms remains a niche franchise, and Gearbox, they wanted more, something bigger, something louder, a hybrid that wouldn't just follow trends, but set them. Borderlands.
The basic idea behind Borderlands is to take the fun of a shooter, the fun moment-to-moment fun, moving, aiming, shooting, dodging, knocking the guys down, and blend that with certain role-playing game elements about growth and discovery and choice.
By 2009, Randy Pitchford had become the passionate, charismatic face of Gearbox. In interviews, he came across as a developer who truly cared about his games and his community, the kind of figure comparable to Todd Howard, someone who seemed to put his passion for games above everything else. He's just so excited about the game, and it really comes through. Randy is fucking kick-ass. I love his enthusiasm. But not everyone bought the hype. Just a few years earlier, at E3 2006, Gearbox wowed audiences with a vertical slice of Brothers in Arms, Hell's Highway.
Notice how we're all whispering and everybody's kind of crouched over and sneaking around. We're in a stealth posture, and there's different postures in the game, and the postures drive the AI. In the stealth posture, we're quiet, we're sneaking around, and the enemy can't see us as easily.
Now, as Randy was saying, these soldiers act like real soldiers. You notice that one soldier just fell as he came off that wall. Those things really happen in real life.
But when the game finally launched in 2008, the reality didn't match the pitch. Mechanics like prone and melee were gone, the atmosphere toned down, and the much hyped destructible environments were heavily scaled back, a downgrade made obvious by the smoother frame rate. It was still a solid entry, loved by many, but not quite the revolutionary leap Randy had sold. And this wasn't a one-off. Even the original Brothers in Arms back in 2004 had a demo that looked nothing like the final game. That showcase relied heavily on scripted events, dressed up as dynamic systems, designed to impress the crowd, not represent reality.
Okay, I'm knocked off my feet, I'm not dead. Simulates concussion with motion blur and desaturation. I'm okay.
Of course, downgrades happen in game development. That's normal. Vertical slices rarely survive intact. Compromises have to be made, even explained by the game's producer on the forums. But perhaps it was a warning that Randy Pitchford wasn't just a magician on stage, he was one behind the curtain too. That context made Borderlands all the more surprising because, this time, Gearbox actually delivered on their big sales pitch.
You know, one of the big things about the game is we've created an AI system that actually develops our weapons for us. And as a result, there's millions of guns in the game. There's more weapons in Borderlands than in every shooter on the 360 and every shooter on the PlayStation 3 added together.
Gearbox introduced the formula that would dominate the next decade, a looter-shooter. And while it wasn't the first to experiment, games like Hellgate London or even Too Human, to some extent, had tried previously, Borderlands was the one that popularized it, adding the shock humor and a unique art style, and the result was something fresh, grindy, and simply fun. But it wasn't without controversy. In 2010, a Reddit thread asked a simple question: did Borderlands get an art style inspiration from this? The video in question was Code Hunters, a short film by Ben Hibben, released in 2006. A film with a style that looked eerily familiar. Too familiar. You see, early Borderlands builds leaned towards a realistic Mad Max art style, as seen in Randy's E3 demo from 2008. But that same year, Gearbox made a sudden and drastic pivot. Out went the muted realism, in came the bold outlines and stylized shading we now associate with Borderlands. Gearbox even touted it as a groundbreaking new technique using hand-drawn textures. That reveal on PC Gamer sent the hype skyrocketing. Suddenly, Borderlands wasn't just another post-apocalyptic shooter, it stood out. And in a fledgling Halo meets Diablo genre that analysts like Michael Pachter had already written off as sent to die, the art style became the hook that made people pay attention. Gaming outlets pressed Randy for answers. He admitted the team had been directly inspired by the short, but Ben Hibben himself told a different story. In an interview with Gather Your Party, he revealed Gearbox had contacted him about potential work, but nothing came of it, going on to say, "I have never created or designed anything for Gearbox or Borderlands. Gearbox saw my work and decided to reproduce it, make it their own, without my help or my consent." A damaging allegation, but in reality, no one owns an art style. Legally, nothing was wrong. At most, it was just another dent in Gearbox armor, because none of it slowed Borderlands down. By 2011, it had sold over 5 million copies, and Randy made sure nobody missed the message. In 2010, he positioned himself as the ultimate champion of gamers, delivering a statement that, surprisingly, resonates today. Perhaps Borderlands can be a lesson for all of us, that when making a video game, we should not be afraid to identify gamers as the audience. I wonder if too frequently, publishers and developers are so caught up with going after new untapped audiences that they can forget to care for the largest, most loyal and reliable audience there is, the current gamer. For now, things looked amazing. A sequel was already in the works, and in 2006, Gearbox had signed a major deal with Sega to develop an Aliens FPS. But outside of Borderlands, Randy Pitchford and Gearbox just couldn't seem to escape controversy.
I'm Randy Pitchford, president of Gearbox Software and executive producer of Duke Nukem Forever. And here at Gearbox, we are in the final hours of Duke Nukem Forever's development. I know it's hard to believe, but it's coming. The game is coming.
Duke Nukem Forever is a fascinating case, holding the Guinness World Record for the longest development cycle in gaming history, 14 years. Spanning many different studios and developers, deserving of its own deep dive, so we won't linger too long here. But Randy couldn't resist doing what he always did best: overselling.
The thing about this game, yes, it's been in development a long time, but there's always been a core of very passionate, very talented developers, always trying to push things to the next level and succeeding in many respects. And every time I've ever had an opportunity to look at the game, there's always been amazing, incredible bits. Stuff that's just fun and over the top and scenes like I've never seen before.
His trademark salesman pitches and endless hype convinced fans that Duke was finally back, cashing in on nostalgia and the franchise's legendary status. Randy Pitchford seems like a stand-up guy. Judging from this interview, he sounds like a gaming fan who just happens to work as a game developer. His enthusiasm is palpable, so I think Duke is in good hands.
And I've known the guys that, created Duke, and I was there back at the beginning, and so we were in a position where we felt we could help. It's a huge game, and all the kinds of things you'd imagine you want to do with Duke, and all the variety that you'd expect to be there, it's all there, so it's a huge game.
But enthusiasm alone couldn't save it. By the time Gearbox acquired the rights from 3D Realms in 2010, the project was already a mess. Gearbox rushed it out the door in just over a year, and the result was one of the most disastrous launches in video game history. In Randy's words years later, they were just trying to save it, painting himself as the hero in multiple interviews.
There was like a dying patient and we just happened to be the doctor in the house. So you're not just gonna let the patient die, And the thing is, when I went in there and I looked at it, it's a beautiful patient.
But Randy didn't stop there. On Twitter, he defended the game's reception with sales numbers. It seems like customers love Duke. I guess sometimes we want greasy hamburgers instead of caviar. And yes, Gearbox was left polishing the turd 3D Realms and George Broussard left, that much is true. A game with poor humor, long load times, and an incredibly linear, subpar gameplay. But Randy simply couldn't take the L. He had to spin a monumental failure into sales numbers. But let's be real, Duke Nukem Forever was always going to sell off the hype of 14 years in development, and the promise that Duke was back, not because of the game's actual value, and for him, that seemed to be all that mattered.
A turd in the hand is worth two in the bush. What the fuck?
Gearbox and Randy, however, just couldn't let go. For months, they reiterated that reviewers and gamers were not only wrong and unfair for the poor reception of Duke. Both Randy and co-founder Brian Martell claimed, "The last time I had a really solid experience like Duke Forever was Half-Life 2. But in the end, Randy and Gearbox didn't need to worry, as their golden goose was about to explode.
Suffice it to say, Vault Hunters, I'm gonna kill you. You wanna prove me wrong? You wanna stop the greatness that is Handsome Jack? Well, come and get me.
By 2012, despite all the ups and downs, Randy and Gearbox still had a bright future. Many players were willing to forgive, and with that came Borderlands 2. This is where everything was doubled down: more loot, a proper story, and Handsome Jack, one of the best villains of all time, pulling players into the Borderlands universe, making it feel more than just a loot grind sandbox. For many, it was the pinnacle of the series, and the numbers proved it. By 2015, Borderlands 2 had sold over 12 million copies, and today, over 30 million. But with that success came something else: Randy Pitchford himself. His eccentric persona was about to transform into full-blown chaos, and the controversies that followed wouldn't just stain his reputation, they would make him one of the most infamous figures in gaming history.
So you have to be, careful and respect the authenticity of the universe. And in many regards, what's already been created gives us a lot to work with. But we've also been able to have fun adding to it. And I think the biggest advantage that this game gets, because it's Gearbox software building it, is we're not settling. Like a lot of games based on licenses, they become kind of work for hire projects, just milking a franchise. You know, when Gearbox works in other people's space, it's because we love that space and we want to.
Tell me sweet little lies.
Originally announced in 2008, Aliens Colonial Marines was marketed by Fox, Sega, and Gearbox as a canon entry in the Alien universe. The premise was simple: a fateful return to the world of James Cameron's 1986 classic. By the time the first trailers dropped in 2011, the hype was unreal. The early videos showed tense corridors, authentic sound design, and graphics that seemed ripped straight from the movies. Oh man, this looks good. It's been in development for fucking ages though, so it's good to see that it actually still exists. And it was true, Colonial Marines had been delayed multiple times, but even the fiasco of Duke Nukem Forever couldn't kill the excitement. At E3, Randy Pitchford himself took the stage, controller in hand, once more for his famous live demos.
Aliens can climb on the ceilings and the walls. It's all driven by sophisticated artificial intelligence.
On display was another jaw-dropping vertical slice, but like so many times before, it was all smoke and mirrors. When Colonial Marines finally released in 2013, it wasn't just underwhelming, it was broken. Brain-dead AI, clunky, broken gameplay. The atmosphere, a far cry from the promises, and the writing, an insult to the franchise. And the laughable punchline? In 2018, a modder discovered that the broken AI, one of the game's biggest problems, could be fixed partially by correcting a single typo in the game code. Gamers had enough. Two players filed a lawsuit in 2013 against Gearbox and Sega for false advertising, claiming the final game looked nothing like its promotional material, showcasing the demos that Randy claimed were actual gameplay. In 2015, Sega agreed to pay $1,250,000 to settle. Gearbox, however, was dropped from the case, something they had pushed, as technically as a developer, they were not responsible for marketing, while also claiming they had invested more than $10 million of their own money to finish the game and lost it all, when accused of diverting funds to other projects. Randy would go on to repeat their sacrifice on Twitter, hoping to gain some victim points.
Oh, poor you!
Legally, their asses were out of the fire, but not out of the public wrath. Because you see, court documents had revealed something else. Gearbox had apparently made announcements to the public without Sega's approval, 8 times in fact, and one of them was the E3 demo. An email from Sega's own brand manager went on to say that Randy Pitchford was, quote, doing whatever the fuck he likes. Apparently, he did it twice on Borderlands 2 also. More interestingly, another email from a Sega official verified with Gearbox that the E3 2011 demo was indeed the bar that we should use to determine where the entire game will be. And yet, another PR document that reads, Gearbox must be given a certain amount of free rein to generate PR hits. Randy Pitchford is a respected development celebrity and is guaranteed to be headline material. Clearly, there was, allegedly, some involvement, one that the only goal was to generate clicks, not represent a functional game. And Randy didn't help his own image. He lashed out, calling the entire case a mafia-style extortion tactic, a waste of time, and Gearbox as a hero standing up to the angry gamers. On Twitter, he doubled down, sparring with critics, accusing journalists and YouTubers like Jim Sterling of being mean, blocking anyone who demanded accountability, and insisting his intent had always been pure, adding that games change during development all the time, and that the final game was actually better than the demo. It's no surprise then that behind the scenes, according to reports, Aliens was a rabbit hole of mismanagement. Here's the rough timeline. From 2005 onwards, Gearbox was already juggling Borderlands, Brothers in Arms, and by 2007, after Sega prematurely announced it, Aliens. Once Borderlands became a slow burn surprise hit in 2009, it was all hands on deck for the sequel, the big moneymaker, leaving Aliens, which we can assume would have jumped into full production, as game development typically goes, starved of resources and in 2010 quietly outsourced to a studio called Timegate. What Timegate received was little more than a pile of assets and a vague direction. According to a Sega whistleblower, Gearbox then allegedly was still taking the funds of Aliens and not only siphoning them to Borderlands development, but to fund Randy's brilliant new idea, saving Duke Nukem Forever in 2010, stretching the resources even thinner. It explains the rush release and why later Aliens needed a cash injection to stay alive. By the end of Borderlands 2 development in 2012, Gearbox finally turned its focus back to Aliens, but it was too late, rushing to do and redo huge portions of the game at the last minute, as delays were no longer possible for Sega. As one developer put it, the game feels like it was made in 9 months, and that's because it was. It was an absolute train wreck. Gearbox tried to do everything at once and mismanaged it to hell, with Borderlands always at the top of the food chain. And Randy, he did what he always did best: talk.
It was probably one of those 7.5 kind of games. So if you want a 9 and you expect a 9 and you give people a 7, then they give you a 5. So it was like a 7.5 game, which I think would have been fine for an Aliens game. Borderlands 2 is Borderlands 2. All of my attention's there. If you want the best game possible, you need to give us as much time as possible after we ship Borderlands 2 before it comes out. And I think Sega just didn't. I think they were just at the end of their rope. I think they just did not have the runway side. I was actually investing our money we'd made in Borderlands. I was investing in the game trying to give it a chance.
Sure, people can enjoy a bad game and even hate a good one. But as the head of the studio, you don't aim for a 7, you should aim for the best possible product. And people just expected the game that was shown. But Randy hid behind expectations, and after 6 years and multiple delays, his excuse was simple: there just wasn't enough time. The blame pushed on to Sega. The excuses didn't land, and even years later, he never changed his stance. In 2021, he tripled down, this time blaming gamers for the disaster, claiming that fans had become so hostile with their expectations that developers were now afraid to show projects in progress. Classic Randy, never accountable, always the victim. Sega would eventually redeem themselves by greenlighting Alien Isolation, but Gearbox and Randy's antics only got worse and weirder.
Battleborn is, by a long shot, the biggest game Gearbox has ever made. Battleborn alone is probably larger than everything we did in the first 10 years of our existence added together. Now, I'm just guessing, I haven't actually mathed that out, but on gut, it feels about right.
Battleborn is FPS, hobby-grade co-op campaign, genre-blended, multi-mode competitive esports, meta-growth, choice plus epic Battleborn heroes. This tweet, after Randy announced Battleborn, was so strange, so baffling, so bizarre, it became its own legend. And Battleborn was indeed a tall order, but something Gearbox did best, blending genres in ways few other studios would even attempt. It was a great premise, and the timing seemed right. Hero shooters were resurging thanks to Team Fortress 2. Borderlands took a step back, a Brothers in Arms sequel was cancelled, Gearbox and 2K went all in on Battleborn.
You know, Borderlands shipped, we had 4 playable characters, and then we added a couple as DLC. But we're shipping the game with 25 playable characters. Like, it just destroys the stuff we did for Borderlands. I'm just like, oh my god, this is great. I hope people like the game.
But there was a problem: Overwatch.
Are you with me?
Announced in 2014, Blizzard's Overwatch and Gearbox's Battleborn initially looked cut from the same cloth, both colorful, fast-paced hero shooters with a cartoony style, but where Overwatch was a competitive team FPS with hero characters akin to Team Fortress 2, Battleborn promised layers of MOBA-style RPG elements to stand out, effectively blending your typical hero shooter with Smite. Both games were set to launch in May 2016, just weeks apart, and Randy, ever the showman, welcomed the rivalry on Twitter, despite being quite different takes on the genre. Well, shit just got real. Blizzard's doing Overwatch beta on our Battleborn launch. Excited they believe as we do there is a business. Competition is real. The communities were rabid, fighting for the one true hero shooter. And at launch, things didn't look too bad, and generally average to positive reviews. But then Overwatch landed, and Battleborn was effectively renamed Stillborn. By July 2016, the PC player base had dropped below 1,000, prices were slashed, micro-transactions were added in desperation, and the population kept sinking, eventually dipping below 100. Randy swore the game would never go free-to-play. In 2017, it did, set into maintenance mode. But Randy's pride couldn't take the hit. On Twitter, he insisted it wasn't free-to-play. It was a free trial with DLC. And then came his strangest move yet. Seeing the popularity of Overwatch Rule 34, Randy decided to promote Battleborn with his own Rule 34. Shockingly, it didn't work. By 2021, Battleborn was shut down completely and pulled from storefronts. For fans, Battleborn wasn't a total disaster. It had a small, loyal cult following, but it never stood a chance. Overwatch devoured the audience with Blizzard's brand power, a lower price tag, and gameplay that was simpler and more approachable. Together with a needless competition and confusing marketing set by Randy and Gearbox, and the dream was dead. Pitchford, of course, downplayed the rivalry he helped create.
Let's imagine Overwatch didn't exist at all. I don't know that anything would have been different. Maybe Battleborn would have had the same exact audience it had. It just wouldn't have been compared.
That's true.
And someone always said, oh, like this is better than that, or this failed compared to that. And it's like, no, it's not. Better is like, they're actually different things, and like, what are we, you know, it might have had the same results.
But after Battleborn, something changed. Randy wasn't just eccentric anymore. He became a meme. And while some still loved his entertainer persona, things were about to get really strange. In September 2016 at PAX West, Randy took the stage, not for a magic trick, but for a song about bigots. With Gamergate still lingering in the background, Randy singled out a tweet, a joke he didn't like about women, of which the audience laughed.
First woman on the moon. Houston, we have a problem. What? Never mind. What's the problem? Nothing. Please tell us. I'm fine.
And then he sang, to the chilling amusement of the audience and the live chat.
Nobody likes a bigot unless he's crying boo-hoo like a big fucking baby, boo-hoo when he's crying.
Finally, right after this virtue signaling, Gearbox rolled out a trailer for Duke Nukem 3D World Tour Edition, with things you would expect from a Duke Nukem game.
So many babes, so little time.
And yet, somehow, this wasn't even his strangest moment.
Doopadoo. I was watching Cam Girl, and I just discovered this, and I was just fascinated, like, what the fuck? And it's a woman who is, and when she has some experience that appears as if she's having a huge amount of fluid comes out of. This is not a sex worker. This is a fucking magician.
December 22nd, 2018. Randy Pitchford sat down on the PivPod podcast and casually described the contents of his lost personal USB drive, a drive that contained highly sensitive Gearbox company files, and right alongside it, an only 18 cam girl video, which Randy insisted wasn't for his own pleasure, but a study tool for a magic trick.
It was barely legal. Like this girl's handle was only 18,
Yeah.
but there was some method here that was like, oh my god, this is genius. It was super clever, and so I purchased one of her videos. I wanted to watch this
You wanted to work out the method.
I wanted to work out the method, but it was late, so I copied it over to this memory stick.
That same USB stick was then recovered from a medieval times restaurant in 2014. But why bring it up now? You see, it all started with a man, Wade Callender. In October 2018, Wade, Gearbox's longtime lawyer and Randy's friend since 2010, filed a discrimination complaint. He alleged Randy mocked him for his Christian beliefs, calling them retarded and indicative of a broken brain. Days later, Gearbox struck, suing Wade for fraud, accusing him of missing home loan payments and misusing company credit cards. In response, Wade fired back with a countersuit, and the allegations were explosive. Randy had secretly diverted a $12 million advance bonus into his personal company, money that should have gone to Gearbox employees. He and his wife allegedly hosted peacock parties involving indecent exposure to minors, later clarified as a variety show, and the USB drive, which Wade described as containing Randy's underage material. The internet ran with it. Memes, outrage, disbelief. Randy cleared it on the podcast, but the damage stuck. Even a bizarre old photo of him kneeling in Penn Jillette's bathroom resurfaced to fuel the chaos. By October 2019, the case was settled. Legally, Randy walked away exonerated. Both parties seemingly bitter and disgruntled, so the truth was hard to find, but in the court of public opinion, the allegations never really went away. And all of this, it was happening just as Borderlands 3 had been finally announced in March 2019, a game fans had been waiting nearly a decade for. But instead of celebrating, Randy found himself right back in the spotlight, not for the game, but for fresh allegations. Allegations of assault. On the Borderlands 3 gameplay reveal trailer, fans noticed something odd. Claptrap's voice, the game's iconic robot, equally loved and hated, wasn't the same. The next day, the original actor, David Eddings, took to Twitter to explain why. For the first time, I insisted on getting paid for my performance, and all of a sudden, they couldn't afford me. Now, I'm not telling them how to run their business, but maybe next time they should put the $12 million payment from 2K in the Gearbox bank account instead. But Randy just couldn't take it, replying to a fan. Mr. Eddings was paid very handsomely during his employment. After his employment, he was made a relatively generous offer to reprise the role. Unfortunately, he turned that opportunity down. And Eddings wasn't alone. Troy Baker, who voiced Reese in Tales from the Borderlands and even the main character in Brothers in Arms, also didn't return. Randy claimed Baker turned the role down too, but Baker had a different story.
I said I would love to come back. They said I'm not coming back. So I think it's interesting that Randy Pitchford tweeted out that I turned it down. And then he said he heard that I turned it down. I would fact check before I tweeted out to the internet.
So what was it? Two bitter actors? Or Randy spinning the truth again? David then dropped the real bombshell. In a Twitter thread, David revealed something he had never spoken about publicly until then. Randy physically assaulted me in the lobby of the Marriott Marquis at GDC 2017. He added, "Personally, I think Randy's been on a tilt the last few years. He's not the victim he portrays himself to be. I even blocked him a couple of years ago for stalking me on social media. Enough is enough." In an interview with Newsweek, David gave more detail. At GDC, he heard someone was looking to buy Gearbox. When he quietly passed this information along to Randy, Pitchford became visibly angry, demanding the source. When David refused, Randy allegedly shoved him back several steps. Eddings later shared angry texts from Randy demanding his loyalty to Gearbox. What happened next of this allegation was telling. Randy Pitchford was quiet, tweeting about Sea of Thieves instead. Gearbox issued a corporate response, and that was that. No accountability. Randy slithered his way out once more. But not out of sight, because his Twitter crash out was only just beginning.
A miracle, you guys! A miracle!
Borderlands 3's original reveal came with a surprise. On PC, a 6-month exclusivity deal on the Epic Games Store. To gamers, it felt like a betrayal, locking the game away on a storefront many already despised for buying up exclusives. Fans revolted, review bombing older Borderlands titles on Steam. And Randy, he poured gasoline on the fire. He threatened to reconsider publishing on Steam altogether. He told angry fans to fuck off. He even tweeted that people should think of him not as a CEO, but as an entertainer.
What?
Then came the rant, a 40-plus Twitter thread where Randy went on about store competition, glazing Epic, trashed Steam as a dying store, and told fans they could bitch and moan all they wanted. The same man that a few years earlier said this.
And I get what, people want to control their customers, but customers don't want to be controlled. Customers want to buy content, and we'll buy it from whoever gives us the best price and the best service. And Valve and Microsoft, they don't really have anything to worry about. They have the best service. And if they're open, I think their business would actually be even more benefited. They can explode even larger.
But thanks to the Epic versus Apple lawsuit, we learned Epic had paid $146 million for Borderlands exclusivity. It all reeked of shameless greed. Weirdly, he was then seen that same month repeatedly replying, "Is Borderlands 3 the new Half-Life 3? Is Borderlands 3 the new Half-Life 3? Is Borderlands 3 the new Half-Life 3?
Stop it. Get some help."
September 2019, Borderlands 3 launched, and despite every controversy, every rant, every meltdown, players didn't seem to care. It sold 5 million copies in just 5 days, the biggest launch in 2K's history. Gameplay was the best in the series, and with looter shooters like Destiny and Warframe booming, plus a pandemic surge soon after, Borderlands 3 would go on to sell over 20 million copies. However, it became polarizing. A quick run through Steam reviews tells you all you need to know. The writing and dialogue, just terrible.
What up, my bandit orphans? I'm gonna be a siren, and then I'm gonna mop the floor with assholes like you.
By 2021, ironically, Randy had climbed even higher. Promoted to CEO of the Gearbox Entertainment Company, the umbrella over both Gearbox Software and Gearbox Publishing. Soon after, Gearbox merged with everyone's favorite publisher, Embracer Group, in a deal worth up to $1.3 billion. That's how valuable the Borderlands brand had become. On paper, he was more powerful than ever, but in practice, Randy's crashouts would just never end.
It was really important to me for all of the fans of our video games, for them to feel like the film respected and was authentic to the world that we created, that I created.
Hollywood decided to give Randy his biggest stage yet. And it went exactly how you would expect. After years in production hell, the film finally emerged. And initial reactions to the trailer, well, superb work. You can really tell the production team glanced at the Borderlands Wikipedia page.
No problem, I'm going back in here in the weight room.
I'll see you later.
I got a weight room in here. Just rolling lifts weights in between takes.
Then came the screenings. Then came the reviews. On release in August 2024, a staggering 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Over the following days, it crawled to a 10%, with an audience score stuck in the 40s. The budget, $115 million. The worldwide gross, just $33 million. A flop of epic proportions. And just like Aliens, just like Duke Nukem Forever, Randy went into a full meltdown defensive mode. He started replying to anyone who criticized the movie, ranting in tangents, blocking fans, even some of the biggest Borderlands creators.
I'm tired, boss.
By now, people were asking the obvious question. Yes, Randy was part of a generational run for Gearbox. Yes, Borderlands had made him and his company billions. But how many controversies, how many meltdowns, how many lawsuits could one man survive? To make matters worse, in early 2024, Gearbox was sold again, this time from Embracer Group back to its longtime publishing partner, 2K's parent company, Take-Two. A $460 million deal that saw waves of layoffs hit within hours of the ink drying. Meanwhile, more original Gearbox developers were quietly leaving over creative differences. as is the case for these massive AAA studios. And with Borderlands 4 looming, that meant the circus wasn't over. It was only gearing up for its next act. August 20th, 2024. At Gamescom, Borderlands 4 was unveiled. Excitement was there, but so was skepticism. Between the film flop, Randy's antics, and the divisive writing and world of Borderlands 3,
Thanks! I need a new name for them!
Might also need to stop doing that problematic accent!
fans were cautious. It's either over or we are so back, literally no in between. And so came the brilliant PR moves by Randy Pitchford. When fans raised concerns about Borderlands 4 costing $80, Randy responded, A, not my call. B, if you are a real fan, you will find a way to make it happen. The backlash was instant, and the hype surrounding Borderlands 4 buried under Randy's arrogance. On stage at PAX East, he doubled down.
So there's some folks that don't want to see prices go up, even the ones deciding what the prices are. There's other folks accepting the reality that game budgets are increasing and there's tariffs for the retail packaging, and like, it's getting gnarly out there, you guys. Borderlands 4 has more than twice the development budget than Borderlands 3.
This would put the game's budget at over $300 million, one of the most expensive games ever made. But was that really an excuse, or just another case of AAA bloat and mismanagement? The effects of this were already seen on Borderlands 3. Developers complained bonuses were slashed, with Gearbox blaming the high costs, and Randy reportedly telling staff they were free to quit if they didn't like it. This from a studio with a unique revenue-sharing model that, during Borderlands 2, had been so generous, some devs literally bought houses. Maybe the issue wasn't the game price at all, but the way the money was spent. And through that PR nightmare, Randy did something rare. He actually apologized to fans. Well, sort of. A wall of text of damage control that let you know Randy wasn't sorry for what he meant, but for the misunderstanding, or the existence of paragraphs. Fans weren't buying it, but in the end, the price settled at $70. Whether that was the plan all along or the result of backlash is anyone's guess.
Heyo, I'm Randy Pitchford, founder of Gearbox Entertainment. Today, we're giving you our deepest look yet at Borderlands 4. It's the perfect entry point for new players, with incredible new places and a great story. And for our longtime Borderlands fans, we're throwing back to our more grounded tone, while pushing gameplay ahead further than ever before.
For months, Randy Pitchford and Gearbox had been selling Borderlands 4 as the just right Borderlands. And at release, that promise mostly delivered. By many accounts, it was the best and most fun Borderlands since Borderlands 2, fixing many of its predecessors' issues. However, first impressions came with a storm of performance problems. Low FPS, stutters, crashes, even on promotional videos.
Wait, what? We just went to... What happened? I don't know. Oh, the game? You crashed the game? How?
Another AAA Unreal Engine 5 mess, in a game that wasn't even chasing visual fidelity. Randy tried to reassure fans. A day one patch would improve things, urging players to set realistic expectations given the massive and unjustifiable PC requirements. But the problems persisted, leading to many negative Steam reviews. And Randy, instead of accountability, he told fans to just enable frame generation and performance mode with DLSS. Replies summed it up. You are seriously disconnected from what actual gamers want. You also don't seem to understand how this is unacceptable behavior. Just promise to optimize your game. Frame gen should absolutely not be the answer. It spiraled from there. Randy declared Borderlands 4 as a premium game made for premium gamers, angering players yet again considering even premium hardware like a 5090 ran the cel-shaded game poorly. It continued, if you are trying to drive a monster truck with a leaf blower's motor, you are going to be disappointed, or simply refund the game. How dare you to have an older, weaker system? But he wasn't done. telling one fan, sarcastically, to just code your own engine and show us how it's done, like some high school argument. Then doubles down with numbers, insisting only a small fraction of players were reporting issues, dismissing poor reviews as just angry, emotional gamers, ignoring the fact barely anyone files tickets. Hours later, he triples down with another thread. PC gamers must accept the reality of the relationship between their hardware and what the software they are running is doing. Relentlessly still blaming everyone but himself and his studio for the poor optimization. It was the perfect culmination of Randy's narcissism and Twitter addiction, even when the product is a good one. And while the debates over optimization, DLSS, and Unreal Engine 5 are a topic for another time, one thing is clear. All Randy ever needed to say was, "We are working on it." Borderlands has kept succeeding against all odds, yet it remains trapped under the weight of Randy Pitchford and Gearbox's own chaotic management, which raises the question, performance issues aside, would the series be even bigger under different leadership? Could Borderlands and Gearbox finally escape this terrible bad PR and image? But as it stands, Randy isn't going anywhere. As he himself once said when asked if the internet had moved on from his infamous USB stick controversy, "The internet is fine. All they care about is if my next video game is good or not." And that is Randy Pitchford.